Kia ora and welcome to Cinema in Context, where we discuss all things film and the connections between. My name is Jeremy Downing.
I'm William Chen.
And I'm Sarah Watt.
And each month at Cinema in Context, we discuss two films, one current and one retrospective, with some connection. It could be the same director, the same actor, or a similar theme. This month, we are discussing Fast and Furious 9. Was it The Fast and the Furious 9?
Oh, we'll talk about the titles soon enough.
Fast 9.
F9.
F9 The Fast Saga.
Yeah, Saga. Yeah.
Anyways, the ninth in the Fast and the Furious series, and The Fast and the Furious, which came out in 2001, 20 years ago, in fact.
Amazing.
The connection being they are part of the same franchise. I believe 10 films in the series, even though this is the 9th film of this one. Mm-hmm. Yeah, 10 films. And
two assorted short films and a Universal theme park ride. Oh my gosh.
Probably computer games and backpacks and lunchboxes.
And a retirement fund, I think, for Vin Diesel.
Well, a plastic surgery fund at least. Right, well, let's hear about these films. William, do you want to jump in and give us a bit of a summary of the original The Fast and the Furious?
All right, Jeremy. So, the year was 2001. June, a couple of months before some big things were about to happen in the world. Street racing was all the rage. And Rob Cohen, director of The Fast and the Furious, had read an article called Racer X about the illegal underground street racing scene of Los Angeles. Fast forward to The Fast and the Furious, and we're going to call them by their actor names, because who remembers their real names anyway in the movies? So, Paul Walker is an undercover cop trying to get in with Vin Diesel's gang of street racing family members as they go about stealing some, tech. Let's just say tech. By tech, I mean, of course, DVD CRT combos. That would get you so much money.
$3 million is the
oh my gosh.
The stakes are high, people. The
stakes are incredibly high. That's how we start a franchise.
Yeah.
As Paul Walker falls in love with Vin Diesel's sister and must decide between his loyalties between the FBI and this crime family, they have to stave off rival gangs, street races, and finally, the most heinous crime of all, brotherly betrayal.
Excellent. Well, let's jump forward 20 years to F9. Sarah.
It's 2021. Technically, probably 2020 when the film was intended to come out, but let's say it's 2021. In this 9th lap of the franchise, Vin Diesel and Michelle Rodriguez are living in rural peace, raising Dom's toddler son from the previous episode, when they suddenly receive a distress call from Mr. Nobody, the most irrelevant Kurt Douglas, is that? No,
Kurt Russell.
Kurt Russell,
oh my
character I've ever seen.
Kurt Douglas had played Mr. Nobody.
Guys.
CGI.
Before you can say 10-second car, Dom has reassembled his band of criminal outsiders and they're driving madly through Central American jungles, across rope bridges, landmines and cliffs, and surviving without a scratch or sullied white t-shirt. Impenetrable technical jargon then directs their mission to Georgia, Edinburgh and other exotic climes. And throughout this cross-globe caper, everyone maintains a straight face as they engage in brutal fights. The women, who are admirably fully clothed, now it's 2021, more than hold their own, and a variety of vehicles are driven far too quickly. The acquisition of an industrial-strength magnet wreaks havoc, and motorway chase scenes induce gasps of disbelief.
Wow, thank you,
amazing.
Sarah. That was wonderful. I think it's worth saying that I went into Fast and Furious 9. William and I went and saw it this week together at the movies, and I have never seen a Fast and the Furious film before. There's a lot of F sounds in there, isn't there?
Yeah.
I had the choice to jump in with the Fast and the Furious before, but I was really looking forward to going into this 9th film with no context beyond what I might have picked up from the zeitgeist. And so that was my introduction, and I watched The Fast and the Furious this morning.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's start with you then. So number 9, I won't say what were you expecting necessarily, but what was your impression? Like, did you understand any of it? Did you know the backstories? Could you follow anything?
Could you pick any of the backstories up from what they showed in the movie?
Great question. And I think it's worth saying that we will be talking spoilers with this whole series, because there are some some goofy spoilers to be had.
Some major goofy spoilers.
I think I knew that the film was. I knew that Michelle Rodriguez had died and come back to life. That was kind of a piece of information that had been thrown around. I knew that one of the films ended with a chase sequence on a runway that defied any logical, real-world runway, the length that it kind of went on this runway.
And
so
that's the only thing that makes this franchise unbelievable.
I guess in watching the original film today, it met the expectations that I had of what that original film was. And then based on what the two of you have probably told me, I had a sense that the series had been reinvigorated in much the same way the Mission Impossible series has been reinvigorated. And
the Bonds, actually, like the Bond films, have got more flashy, more high-tech, more everything.
I suppose so, but at least the Bond movies, there's a sense of what James Bond is in the first Dr. No film.
I see.
That is still aligned very nicely with the most recent ones.
Sure.
Maybe Skyfall's a bit different, but on a whole, like there's a certain pieces that are there. Whereas the Fast and the Furious one is very much a buddy flick.
Yeah.
It's of its time. Like
It's a hangout movie.
It's very much about the family that they create together. It's almost Party of Five, and there's no adults around the place.
And it's petty crimes. It's just petty criminals driving cars.
It gets DVD CRT combos.
I mean, the stakes are so low. It's
Really?
you know, jokingly said they were high earlier. That really stuck out to me today.
Yeah.
I thought, wow, this is about something very low. Whereas you get to Fast and the Furious 9, and it is. I actually had quite a great time. But I said to William at the end of it, this felt like a Indiana Jones movie, a Pirates of the Caribbean film, Mission Impossible. It really is having a blast.
To me, it's also Tenet and Inception. And the Inception maybe for the impenetrability of all the layers of plot. But Tenet, every time they're driving anywhere and doing backwards racing down the motorway in that, or in between tanks or whatever it might be, I'm reminded of Tenet.
I have to say, one of the things that really stuck out to me, and I felt this watching the movie, not having read anything, and I've since read articles about it, but the multicultural cast, the representation in the cast was very impressive, and particularly the girls as well. They weren't just set dressing. I mean, Missandei from Game of Thrones, she was the Hermione of the show. Like she's the hacker that
She's
just
Ramsay
explains
the hacker.
everything.
Gosh.
and just impenetrable tech speak.
Yeah.
Jargon.
Impenetrable technical jargon.
She's just there to
Who
tell you what's
cares?
going on.
Right.
I did love her sequence with her driving the car. That was just a lot of fun. But I was very impressed, and I was reading an article about how these films really, money speaks and Hollywood listened, because they reckon that these films have had a more positive impact on representation of people of color in cinema and Hollywood than any Twitter warrior, keyboard warriors would ever have, because these movies make money, and there's a lot of non-white actors that are.
It's incredible in Part 9 how their entire team is made up of non-white characters. Every single person on the team.
And the two baddies are the white people.
Yeah.
Charlize Theron and
John Cena.
Oh, I didn't mean him, but okay,
yeah.
him. But no, the
The German guy,
Scandinavian,
the Otto.
Icelandic
Yes, I
dude.
am Otto.
Yeah. Can we just talk about John Cena? I'm not a big fan, but I suddenly feel kind of mean because I don't.
He's such a
really,
lovable lug.
Well, look, okay. So I'm not the most judgmental person, but I do think he's a little bit absurd.
You don't think Vin Diesel's absurd?
Well, there's something bulky. There's something bulky.
That scene where he
about
turns
John
into King
Cena.
Kong and smashes 50 dudes off a ramp?
What about they just throwing each other through walls?
Yeah.
John Cena and Vin Diesel. I'm like, what is this?
All right, so I'm not saying it's realistic. But anyway,
And they get up and there's like the tiniest rivet of blood going down one's forehead.
well, okay, so you're quite right, because I was about to say John Cena, I find him charmless, but then so is Vin Diesel. But I was going to say, but John Cena, I don't really think that he acts with his face, but then there's Vin Diesel. So maybe I'm running out of arguments here for why he's just not my favourite person. However, I felt really guilty because I was sort of a bit like, I don't really rate him as anybody particularly, but apparently he's really lovely
In real
and
life.
very
Yeah.
apolitical
Yeah.
and very sort of charitable and
Kids
gracious.
love him,
and
yeah.
so now I feel like, now I'm the jerk.
He's kind of like the new really rock, isn't he? He's got
Yeah.
that same sort of charisma. But I hear you. I hear what you're saying, Sarah. Can I ask a question, plot-wise? Who is the mother of Vin Diesel's son, if it's not Michelle Rodriguez?
So, it's
Go for
Chris
it.
Hemsworth's wife in real life, and her name is Elsa
Pataki?
Pataki, and she's in a previous episode.
I love you call it an episode because it feels like it's a TV
She's in
thing.
a previous episode, and she has a relationship. No, she's an FBI agent or something.
No, okay, so I'll take over. Sarah.
okay.
So she was a Brazilian cop in Fast 5 that
Yes.
teams up with The Rock. Now, she was one of the only non-cricket cops in Rio, so she kind of got taken under The Rock's wing, and when The Rock's team was killed, she became kind of like the in-between police person lady. And, but meanwhile, she and Vin Diesel realized that they had a connection, because she lost her husband, he thought he lost his wife, which was Michelle Rodriguez, so they got together, but when Michelle Rodriguez had been revealed to come back, except with amnesia, so she's working for the bad guys.
Yeah, did you know that? Yes,
No,
so Michelle
it is-
Rodriguez is brought back, but she doesn't remember anything. But he does. And so they're all like falling in love, and for her it's like super awkward, because for Vin Diesel it's like, but I know all these things and we've done all this stuff, and she's like, this is creepy, which it is. Anyway.
And so Elena realizes that, his wife's back, or his girlfriend, she don't know they were married at the time, is back. I would do the same if my husband came back to me. And so just
backs
ceremoniously backs off. But she did not realize at the beginning of Fast 6 that she was already pregnant with Dom's child. She has Dom's child between Fast 6 and 7, but
we
doesn't
don't
tell
know
anyone.
this, and she doesn't tell the audience.
And so in Fast 7, she's acting really weird, and the audience is like, hey, what's up, girl? And it turns out that she had been harboring this deep, dark secret this whole time. Charlize Theron finds about this.
Wait, this is in 8.
This is now going from 7 to 8.
Yes, because in 8, Charlize Theron turns up and she's a baddie, and she has kidnapped Elsa Pataki, and she has a baby in a stroller. And suddenly, she's saying to Vin Diesel, this is your child. And then Charlize Theron kills her.
In front of Vin.
And then Vin has to like do this amazing fight scene. Was it on an airplane or
Yeah,
something?
it
It's
is.
in a small space with the child, but the child has headphones put
Oh,
on
no,
its
that's
ears.
not Vin, that's Jason Statham. He's
Oh,
the
yes!
baddie from 7, but Vin gets him back to save his kid while he takes on, what's his name? Tormund Giantsbane from Game of Thrones. And so,
Are you following so far?
This is
Because we're
amazing.
going to do a test on this.
Charlize is using his baby as leverage to force him to commit heinous crimes. And when his team confronts him, Vin, with his gravelly voice and his face, goes, I have no choice.
Was that your Jason Statham voice?
No, that was
or your
my Vin Diesel.
voice? Just getting a little bit Jason
I love how Vin Diesel goes
Statham.
from like he's either 1 or 10. There's no
Right.
in between. What I will say is that this film, it's pulpy, and the connection with Indiana Jones is more than just the driving through the jungle with chipmunks and that's
It's not much more, but yeah.
yeah, but it's that kind of that serialized nature of it, that soap opera nature of it, that I actually just enjoyed them leaning into it.
Yes.
It was a lot more fun than the Kong vs Godzilla film that we talked about recently. It felt really fun, and I like that they've made that shift, and I love the joy with which the two of you are recounting this. It is, again, very different to the first movie, which the first movie, it was like with we were talking last month about the title sequences and how the Fast 9 3D text was very Charlie's Angels. In fact, this whole thing, I couldn't help but keep thinking of Charlie's Angels, which came out the year before, I think. I kind of really enjoyed the old one for different reasons.
Fast 1 was a surprisingly good film, and I think part of what I really like about it, and this is like so stupidly me, I'm really charmed by the fact that when they made it, they couldn't possibly have known that it was going to go on to become the first of this behemoth.
And they would be playing the same characters 20 years later.
And if they did know that, they probably wouldn't have called him Brian. But in any event, they made a film, and they made it obviously with heart, and it was actually really good. As far as just an action movie with two dudes and a whole lot of cars and a plot that actually works because you've got the intrigue of you're betraying me and you're actually a cop, etc., and where do my loyalties lie? It's actually a really good film.
And I find, everyone talks about the family stuff in the later Fast and Furious films, but it's totally there in the first one.
Yes.
His little makeshift family, or Dom's makeshift family, is so odd. Like, they have movie nights where they watch I guess, Bruce Lee documentaries. And my favorite line in the whole movie is when Vince, who's pissed that Brian is getting with Mia, who he has a crush on, is all like, "You can make your own damn popcorn," and storms out of the room.
And it's really like, when I say basic, not basic in the modern pejorative sense, it's just simple, isn't it? It's just simple stuff.
It's a bunch of young people like hanging out.
Yeah, it's a bit like Party of Five, right? And where's the parents?
So let me just ask you, so I don't know if you picked up in Fast 9, but Dom's child, who he's raising now with his lovely wife, Michelle Rodriguez, do you know what the kid's called?
I can't remember.
Would you like to hazard a guess?
Is it Brian?
Yes!
Oh, right.
Or Little Brian.
Yeah,
Right.
little B.
Well, also, I didn't understand when the car at the end comes up to the table. I was thinking, oh, that's John Cena, and William's like, no, that's Brian. He's been off screen. Oh, Brian! I said it like Family Guy.
He's been babysitting.
Yeah.
I was like, because I said, who's been looking after the kid? And he's like, oh, Brian. I was like, what?
I know.
Yeah, but I do appreciate that they're trying to keep.
It's
Paul
nice,
Walker alive.
especially
It's poignant.
at the end of 7, which made grown men cry.
Yes.
Kind of giving Brian and Mia the send-off. Like, they get to retire from the life of action, and even though, Paul Walker didn't get to live to see this, the character is kept alive and well, and is still part of their family.
And they
in the
do a little
filmic world.
CGI thing at the end of number 7, and that by this stage of the sort of the epilogue, I guess, they're already. The fourth wall has been broken, and they're acknowledging they're doing like little flashbacks
Of
to
the previous
all of the
movies.
movies, which of course is so fourth wall breaking. But we're all loving it because we've all known that he died before we're seeing this film. And then there's the two cars going along the motorway, and Dom is in one of them, and Brian CGI'd a little is in the other. And then we have an overhead shot, and he takes the left fork
Oh,
in
that's
the
lovely.
road and goes off into retirement with Jordana Brewster. And grown men cry, and it says for Paul.
At the very end, the
That's
final thing is
powerful.
for Paul.
There's an interesting thing here. I mean, there's another piece of this. One of the things that struck me about the first one is just, and also the new one, but a little bit, not as much, is the exploration of masculinity. Like, it's really like a version of masculinity that I guess defined that time. That's probably why I haven't watched it, because I just wouldn't have connected with that as a 14-year-old when it came out. It was just not my bag at all. Cars are not something I'm interested in. I love a good car chase, but
Well, none of us is a petrol head, really,
And
are we?
the first movie is
No.
obsessed with cars, like
Yeah.
the minutiae of the cars.
But it's also like even the 9th movie with this sort of fatherly son connection through cars. That,
Yes.
I guess if that's your bag, you're going to connect with it. But it's really interesting the depiction of what it means to be a man in that world, and the kind of bravado of Vin Diesel's character in those racing scenarios, and Paul Walker coming in, and it is that buddy flick, which is the same. The buddy flick is the same as the romantic comedy, and I just found it really interesting. And the depiction of the woman is very much of its time in that time, but quite, like you said, Sarah, quite impressive in the new movies.
It goes in a funny place, and I hope now, Jeremy, that you're inspired to watch 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
I don't
and
know.
7
Yeah.
and 8, and you could probably skip 2, which is
Yeah.
as dumb as a bag of
Two is
hammers.
really bad.
I've heard some people say they love to.
2 is just really different.
So stupid.
It feels like a
pointless.
drug undercover cop movie from the 70s in places.
Right, because Vin Diesel's not in that one, is
Yeah.
he? It's Paul Walker's. And then the third one's a different cast that you said is woven
That's
into.
your
different.
Tokyo Drift, but of
Some
course,
people love that one.
But you
Yeah.
need number 3 to know that Han dies, so that they can bring him back in 9 miraculously and accuse Jason Statham, who we only met in 6, of killing him. So I love actually how much they are mucking about.
With the timeline.
Right, and getting away with it. I actually am. I'm in admiration of
So-
how convincing it is.
Just about how Tokyo Drift is brought into part 9. In Tokyo Drift, it focuses on these high school kids. This American exchange student is in Tokyo, and he's learning how to drift, being mentored by the Han character. Han gets killed, he gets upset, they drift down a mountain. And
Can I
they're
just
high
ask
school
as well?
children.
Can I just ask as well, 3, like in the chronology, actually, when does 3 happen in
3
the universe?
takes place after 6 and before 7.
Right, did you know
Yeah.
that?
Oh, no.
Yes.
Because they love Justin Lin, who created the character Han in his previous movie, Better Luck Tomorrow, the crew loved Han so much.
Yeah, I know.
So Han is from another series.
Another movie, an indie movie he made.
Wow.
So he has the same name, and he's also played by Song Kang.
But just
Because William was fizzing in the theatre, I had no idea.
Yeah.
And I said
Yeah.
to William at the start, I said, don't tell me anything. Like, I don't want you to try and explain anything to me in the movie because I'm just kind of, that's part of the fun of it. But
Yes.
you were like, oh my gosh.
But you knew Han was coming back because
from the
he's in the
trailers.
posters.
Yeah.
Right. So, okay, right. Did Justin then make 3? Did he make
He
Tokyo
did.
Drift?
He made
Right.
3, 4, 5, 6,
6.
and 9.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, right. So, as you're saying, Tokyo Drift happens between 6 and 7.
Yes. And in Tokyo Drift, our main characters are all they're high school children. And 9 chronologically happens about 5 years after Tokyo Drift. And now suddenly they're all like aeronautics engineers in Germany. It's like, how do we get to this?
Well, so here's the other thing I wanted to say in terms of a trajectory of maturity, if it can be called that. So, in the very beginning, you've got Tyrese and Ludacris. And 20 years on, you've got Tyrese and Ludacris. And correct me if I'm wrong, but they suddenly seem to have skills and expertise, and they drive better than they did before. Maybe Tyrese always drove, to be fair. But Ludacris seems suddenly to be a real person who understands the world and science and stuff, notwithstanding flying through space.
Which one's Ludacris?
Well, so Ludacris is a real person. He's a rapper.
Ludacris Bridges.
And he's from the film Crash, from Paul Haggis's 2004 movie. But anyway, Ludacris is...
So he plays Tej, the hacker, and the two of them go up into space.
Okay. Is
Yes.
he the...
So he's always with Nelly Emanuel.
Right, so he's the one that says you're dumbass.
Yeah.
And he's the one with the wicked afro
in part
Fast and
2,
Furious
he has a huge
M1.
afro. Oh, he's not in 1. He's introduced in 2.
I was going to say, I don't
what?
recognize him in one.
Oh, but Tyrese is in 1.
No, he's also introduced in 2.
Sorry. Okay.
I quite like that. I like that there's these different ways. Like it's almost like the first 3 movies all kind of did something different, and then they've woven it all together with these later films.
Well, here's what I didn't realize that Tokyo Drift was between 6 and 7 because Jason Statham comes into 6, right? And he comes in, this will surprise you, Jeremy. He's a right Londoner and he talks like this the whole time and he bashes people up, yeah?
Just to do something different.
That's right. So it's really quite a stretch for Mr. Statham. And he's a baddie in that. And his mum is Helen Mirren. And this will surprise you too. She's a right Londoner. But the thing that bums me out about Helen Mirren, in number 9, I mean, thank goodness she had such a small scene, in my opinion, because she is an accomplished actress who's done all types of English accent, and she can be as Cockney as they come. I thought she was rubbish in number 9. And I
She's
actually
pretty
thought she was a bit
Cockney.
rubbish in 6.
Well, she was Cockney Cockney as heck in Hobbs and Shaw.
Yeah.
Like, hello, you after me, son?
Yeah, but she sounds a little bit like Dick Van Dyke. I mean, it's like, you don't need to be like, what's going on with you, lady? You know how to do this. I thought that was rubbish. Anyway, 6. 6 is very London. We were about to talk about the way the women are dressed over the 20 years. And I remember that in 6, these women in London, and I'm doing the inverted commas, air commas, these London women who are blatantly not anyone you've ever seen in London and are dressed like in
the
a
white.
tiny bit of sequin.
Is it the white sequence?
Oh, no.
They're all in white clothes?
No, I'm talking about episode 6.
Oh, right. Sorry.
When they're in London, and there are actual street races happening. This just looks like they've imported a bunch of like people from somewhere else because
Well,
none of those people look like they're English.
But that's the joke in 9, right? Because all the girls were imported from somewhere else, and it was artificial.
You could what
Yeah.
it was artificial in the making of it or in the actual
No,
narrative?
in the actual narrative.
Yes, because you can tell.
Yeah.
I love. Okay, so this is interesting. So there's a self-awareness and just it's like they're using all the colors in the crayon box. You
Yes,
know?
yes.
There's something quite fun about that, and we don't see very many movies these days that don't. They're not taking themselves too seriously, but seriously enough to still do their fans
There are
a
a couple
good
of other
service.
bits of self-awareness, I feel like, in 9, aren't there? There are a couple of nods to things.
If this was a movie,
Oh, that's right. Why are we...
If this was a movie, and I love that little your Yoda, you know,
You're a puppet.
You're a puppet. That was a great
And the
piece of
fact that
dialogue.
Tyrese, because I said in my intro, that they survive without a scratch or a sullied white T-shirt, and then he spends several portions of the film, doesn't he, going, wait a second,
Yeah,
guys,
are we invincible?
Why are we okay? And it's like,
Like
thank you
Jules
for
from
acknowledging.
Pulp Fiction.
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
thing.
Yes, thank you for acknowledging this. Although
That's
they were
great.
then mocking.
There was a trailer before the movie we saw, something Milkshake.
Yes. Oh gosh, what was it called?
Something milkshake,
Yeah.
bombastic milkshake or something. I can't remember. And it's
Karen Gillan and
Karen Gillan,
Lena Headey.
Lena Headey. You've got
Michelle Yeoh, I think.
Michelle Yeoh, Angela Bassett,
Yeah.
and the Spy Kids mum, Cara.
Gugino.
Yes, these 4 action, like they've all got narratives that precede them. So it's like a Kill Bill style, very male gaze, I have to say. I went and checked to see. I'm pretty sure it's a male director, but still, like, a quote unquote badass woman film. So four fighters, but it struck me. I was like, this casting is pulling from the roles that they've played in the past. You've got Cersei Lannister from Game of Thrones, who's like the biggest villain of the piece. Arguably, you've got Angela Bassett with her kind of connections. You've got just Cara Gugino, what's her name?
Gugino.
Yeah,
Gugino, and the other one that I can't think.
Michelle
Yeoh. Like these, it brings with it, and even Karen Gillan with her connections to Marvel and Doctor Who. I was like, wow, that's really interesting, and it feels like there's a bit of that in. A lot of that in the Fast and the Furious films, with the Jason Stathams, with The Rock, with the John Cenas, with the Helen Mirrens and the Charlize Therons, and
and the Cardi B's.
Cardi B.
I thought that was the biggest waste of time cameo.
What the heck was that?
I don't even.
And I couldn't understand what she was
I
saying.
couldn't understand what you're saying.
No. And then that was over. I thought that was ridiculous.
Oh, it was kind of fun though that there was a group of the women in that space that were actually pretending to be cops.
Can I just say, the other week we went to the Hollywood Avondale to see a retrospective of 2001's Training Day, the wonderful Antoine Fuqua film, with Denzel Washington and Ethan Hawke, and it's so brilliant. And the beautiful thing that they did in that film, which I remembered they did a lot in the late 90s, early 2000s, is give cameos to music stars or rap stars. So you've got Snoop Dogg in a substantial cameo role. And now suddenly I forget. Oh my gosh. Oh, you've got Dr. Dre in a substantial supporting character role. But they're doing proper work. They're doing proper acting. And you're still getting that thrill of, oh, look, it's Dr. Dre or Snoop Dogg. Nowadays, it's like, oh, we'll get Cardi B in and we'll give her some lines that we can't understand for like a split second. What's that for?
It's like in I think part 7 had Iggy Azalea as one of the race announcers.
That's right.
I was like, what?
Yeah.
I want to come back to the Charlie's Angels connection, and that's interesting. We watched last year during lockdown. My flatmates and I watched the new Charlie's Angels movie.
Oh, right.
It was a Friday night. We're like, let's watch. We managed to watch trashy movies every Friday night, which kind of was quite a wonderful thing in lockdown. But we watched this new Charlie's Angels movie, and it was really boring. Not a good film. Not even bad. So bad it's good. It was just sort of very average.
Yeah.
And I remember Elizabeth, what's her name? Who's the director?
Thanks.
Elizabeth Banks saying, oh, if you don't like this movie, you're sexist. And I thought, oh no, it's just a really bad movie.
Yeah, that's a silly thing for her to say.
Yeah, and I think because she was saying it's a film made by women, I appreciate that, but it wasn't a good film made by women. So we watched it and we're like, oh, this was terrible. And my two flatmates and I, we said, should we watch the original? Well, quote unquote original, the film.
The Cameron Diaz,
Drew Barrymore one. And it was so cool. We had such a good time. Very similar style to Fast and the Furious. The title sequences, the almost Prodigy in Fast and the Furious, but there's Prodigy, the music and
nice.
And Charlie's Angels. Yeah. And there's just some of the really cool effects. I really liked the blurring in Fast and the Furious.
The kind of hyperspace every time they turn on NOS.
Yeah. And it's got a real buzz about it, a real rhythm that's in Charlie's Angels as well. And there was a real style of that time. I'm trying to think of what other movies were coming out around the late 90s, early 2000s that had that kind of campy quality.
Maybe The Long Kiss Goodnight, which is another one of the ones that you like.
Yeah, I guess that's sort of
a bit darker,
in the 90s,
serious,
and it feels more akin to the James Cameron Terminator 2 era. What else was coming out at that time?
Well, Speed Racer was much later, right? And
Yeah.
that's taking that kind of ambience and really running with it.
But I think Matrix is probably a good connection
Yeah.
to make, which is the Wachowskis, and that's got that similar.
The digital effects and kind
Yeah.
of that kind of... of course, and Attack of the Clones, kind of the similar vibe.
Yeah, Attack of the Clones. Wow, who would have thought that I would have wanted more prequels after the most recent Star Wars? But it's just interesting of what Ocean's 11 is another one that stands out to me
Yes.
with very highly stylized visuals. And my other experiences with these movies is when I used to work in the video store. These were the classic ones that people would kind of bolster their top 10. You know, you get 10 DVDs out for the week. That, let's get out the Fast and the Furious
cool.
1 and 2 and 3 again.
Just
you know?
to make up the 10.
Yeah, something that's easy to watch and movie fans. And I say movie fans, meaning the ones that would come in and watch pretty much
Yeah.
anything from the DVD store would happily get out.
I think the evolution from 1 to 9, well, actually 1 to about probably 5, because then, as you've said, William, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, they get quite, they're, you know.
Yeah, they become Mission Impossible movies.
Right, exactly. Whereas 1 was kind of one location, if I remember rightly, and it's like one location, 2 cars, 3 guys, or
Yeah,
whatever you want to say, and an actual plot, a la Beverly Hills Cop or something like that from the olden days.
Or
and
Point Break.
Or Point Break.
It's just Point Break.
Which is wonderful. And now, of course, they're going all over the world. And I halfway through F9, I was like, there haven't been that many car chases, but there seems to have been a lot of technology and a lot of crazy stuff and a lot of, we're going to go talk to these scientists about something that Sarah doesn't understand and isn't that interested in, etc., etc. And then we're in a bunker, and then, you know, magnets and fighting, and a lot of fighting.
Yeah.
But then they actually did manage to come back and do more car chases as well. But I feel like it's definitely morphed into, we need to give the audiences everything. And so we do need to acknowledge that, you know, everybody's watching Bourne films, so we need to go everywhere. And Bond films, which means we need technology and gadgets. And Jason Statham's other movies, which means we need to have, you
Lots
know,
of
fight scenes
yeah.
ad nauseum. And so we're going to give them everything.
I feel like Mission Impossible is the best comparison, because if you look at the first Mission Impossible,
Yeah.
it's
A spy caper.
It's a spy caper.
And it's great.
It is good. What I will say is that the new ones capture the team ethic more, and I think
Yeah.
we said that when we talked about it.
Yeah.
But it is quite a different movie. Can we talk about the magnets?
Yeah.
Because they were so cool.
They were fun.
I didn't
Yeah.
care that it was selective magnets.
Yeah.
sometimes they attracted cars, and sometimes they just attracted power lines.
Yeah.
And sometimes they attracted a specific car.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was some. Oh, poor Edinburgh streets.
Oh,
That's all I thought.
destroyed.
But man, some of those scenes were incredible. And I'll say this. This might be blasphemous, but I, as a big Fast and Furious fan, I would say I would happily watch any one of these movies, including the bad ones, namely 2 and 8, over most Marvel movies any
Yes.
day of the week.
Yeah.
Mainly because I feel there's so much more physical ingenuity with the Fast and Furious movies. Like, almost everything you've seen, yeah, it's bolstered with digital effects, but the prime stunts, it's
Yes.
almost always real. And you can see that. And I mean, Justin Lin has gone on for great lengths about how they would spend literally months planning a 4-second shot because it looked cool.
Yeah.
That scene where John Cena's car gets pulled through a building into a truck, it's like, this is physical, and how did they do this?
That was one of the coolest parts of the movie. I will say that I've been talking about Marvel, and we've talked a lot about how the Marvel franchise and what that means for cinema at large. I miss the days of those early 2000s, and maybe it's nostalgic because I was, you know, the perfect age for movies, 13, 14 years old. But I miss the Fast and the Furiouses and the Charlie's Angels and the Legally Blondes and the, you know, they were just cool movies. They didn't have to be anything too intricate, but just really well told character stories. And we're not getting that. I mean, am I wrong? Are we getting that stuff?
There's still, I mean, look, there are still plenty of very, very clever indie flicks that have genuinely cool stories. I don't know if they necessarily, I mean, they're not going to have all the technological craziness going
Just
on.
not
or the
that
CGI.
mid-budget stuff,
That's
right? The mid-budget action films
That's
and
right.
comedies.
And just things that are new and different. We're getting a lot of. I mean, I don't want to parrot the same arguments that people have been having for years, but it does feel like that. Like there's not much coming out that I am like, oh, that looks like an interesting story that I'd like to discover. Everything's like, oh, cool, that's a sequel to that thing, or that's a remake of that thing, or that's
or this is a graphic novel that I love,
Something
and they've
I
made
am familiar with.
Yeah, that's right. And there are, but they're films like I saw a film called Lapsus recently, which is as indie as it comes, and it's as ludicrous as it comes, but it's jolly clever and it's
Does it
vaguely
have Ludacris?
scientific. No, Ludacris isn't in it. Nobody's in it of any note. And it's absolutely like, this is amazing because whose idea is this? You know,
Yeah, right.
But nobody's going to see it. It's not going to make any money.
Yeah. I mean, it's so interesting with the Fast and Furious series because this is a series that has succeeded in the way Marvel has succeeded, right? Taken a bunch of disparate stories and characters and made them a genuinely unified whole in this joint expanded universe. And they almost kind of fell into it by accident because you see the first three movies and they are very, very different movies. And it just so happens that when Justin Lin and Chris Morgan, who came in for part 3, when they got together with Vin Diesel, and it's like, maybe we can make this something more. And then for part 5, that's when you have the big heist where actually we can get everyone's favorite, I say that in air quotes, favorite characters from the previous movies, and let's just put everyone in one movie and kind of bringing together plot threads that were never supposed to be together in the same under the same umbrella, and you see everyone else fail miserably by constructing something from the ground up. The dark universes of the world. Do you guys remember that?
Oh yeah,
Like,
the Mummy was
the
doing
Mummy,
it.
yeah.
They had all of the cast announced before they made.
They even had a photo of the cast. And all of that stuff, all the YA fiction that gets past book 1 but doesn't go anywhere else.
Yeah.
And Fast and Furious is like, they just hit onto the motherlode by accident.
Yeah, I would say the YA fiction is a hangover from the Harry Potter Lord of the Rings.
Right,
zone,
yes,
whereas
yes.
I think the Monsters universe is the Universal universe is definitely in response to Marvel. You mentioned Vin Diesel partnering with Justin Lin and
Chris Morgan.
It made me think of his other series, the Pitch Black series, and they're each quite different movies. So Pitch Black
Is that
chronicles.
Triple X? Is that where he's, or is that another one?
No, that's another one.
Because I forgot he was Triple X as
Yeah.
well.
He still is Triple X, I guess.
Yeah, but we don't see any, do we? Because he's busy.
No. Yeah.
So Pitch Black, the Chronicles of Riddick, which
Oh,
is
yeah.
very different to Pitch
That's
Black.
right.
Yeah.
And then Riddick, I think, is the third one, which
Yeah.
is more of a Pitch Black style film. Not always the greatest movies, but definitely watchable and similar, very different. That has potential to become something bigger. But I wonder if Vin Diesel has a bit of a, obviously he works in the lanes that he's works with what he's given.
Yeah.
But that savvy with Justin Lin and Chris Morgan, was it?
Yeah, yeah.
I would be interested to know how much Vin Diesel is a part of this franchise.
Do you know, and William will tell you better than I, do you know all the stuff around Hobbs and Shaw and the infighting and all that? Because
No.
would you believe not everybody thinks that Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is a good guy? I mean, I do. I like him enormously. But am I right in saying that he and Vin Diesel do not get along?
Yeah.
And Hobbs and Shaw, which you alluded to before as being in the 10th film, although there'd be people who would argue that it isn't, had to happen. Right, because Vin Diesel was like, I don't want this other megastar and Jason Statham in my movie. So,
Jeremy, when you spoke about masculinity, this is exactly what I was thinking of, right? Because, I mean, Dwayne Johnson is a superstar, a megastar, and was brought on in Fast 5 to kind of be this antagonist to their group.
he's an FBI agent.
Yeah, so he's like, I'm going to hunt him down. Taking you down, Toretto, kind of thing. And he, obviously, his star kept rising even if he was in these Fast and Furious movies. And the Fast and Furious movies just made him more famous. And I think Vin Diesel didn't like that because this is his franchise and his baby. So they had a huge falling out while filming 8. And you can see it in Fast 8. And I think why it's Fate of the Furious is such a bad movie is because Hobbs and, what's Vin Diesel called?
Toretto.
I just know it was Vin Diesel.
Yeah.
Hobbs and Dom, they do not share a scene together.
Is that not the one where they're fighting each other in the glass office?
Or
is that in 7?
That is 7. That's 7.
Right,
yes.
okay. And the fighting, you're like, they're not pulling punches here. This is two guys smashing each other around a glass office.
So yeah, like the two of them refuse to be on set together, and it's kind of this
Awkward.
filmmaking family that suddenly had their two dads start, you know, this big argument. And of course, Statham and The Rock went on to make Hobbs and Shaw, which is still part of the universe, and Chris Morgan wrote the movie. But Vin Diesel, I think, really hates The Rock, and The Rock will apparently never be in a mainline Fast and Furious movie again.
Wow. No, I did not know that.
So there's trouble in paradise.
And Vin Diesel is the godfather of Paul Walker's daughter, Meadow.
Yeah.
But that's not surprising because they're family in real life as well as not in real life.
And he named his own daughter Paula, right?
Yes,
In honor
or
of-
Pauline.
Pauline, yes.
In honor of Paul.
Wow.
Then you've got little Brian in the film. So
Yeah.
this goes deeper than just a script and some characters.
What's amazing about all the fight scenes is, especially when Statham and The Rock and Diesel were in the same movie, so for 6 and 7, for 7 especially, this might just be apocryphal, but apparently they each had in their contracts that they were not allowed to lose a fight. And so if you watch the fight scenes, no one loses. It's always a draw, or as someone's about to deal the death blow, they get interrupted by bad guys, and it's amazing.
Wow, all these things that behind the scenes of
Yes.
movies that you know, it's like, oh gosh.
Yeah.
Or it really affects the thing, or they have to have a product placement of their thing, or whatever it is.
Corona.
Or it's like was it Arnold Schwarzenegger didn't want to fire a gun in Terminator 2, and so that's why there's no guns in Terminator 2. Well, no, he didn't want to be seen killing anybody. That's what it was. He didn't want to kill anybody, and
That's
so that's
interesting.
why.
And that's why they wrote it in then that
Yeah.
John Connor says to him, "You're not allowed to kill anybody."
He's like, they'll live.
I'm not.
Well, they'll live
Yeah.
or something. Well, one thing I noticed as well, obviously only seeing these two movies, is that we see in F9 the flashback sequences with
That's
Dom's,
new.
Dom's
I'm so glad
father,
you brought that up. And brother.
Dom's father and brother.
We didn't know he had a brother.
No,
Did
well, I
you?
asked William.
No.
that.
Nobody knew he had a brother.
Well, I said to William, "This is the first time John Cena's been introduced." Like, first time.
This is the first time we even knew he had a brother,
Yeah.
let alone John Cena.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that as well. That retconning, because clearly it wasn't in the
Such
story.
a major retcon.
Yeah,
But it works.
It works, and it ties beautifully into something that's set up in the first movie.
Well, that's the thing, because I noticed in the first movie he's talking about watching his father burn.
I know.
And I was
and
like,
I
oh,
heard,
that's cool.
and he goes, and I heard him screaming, and then they told me later it was me who was screaming.
Yeah.
So I was waiting for the screaming in number
yeah.
9.
Oh, he was doing it. It
Yeah,
just
he was like, "That's my dad."
Yeah.
Did you know that that's a New Zealand actor? He's
I
from
heard
Christchurch,
that.
Vinnie
Yeah.
Bennett.
What?
He was at
Wow.
the premiere that I went to.
Oh, that's so cool.
And you know what? I wondered, because his voice was so Vin Diesel.
Yeah, whether it was overdubbed.
I did, and I asked him, and he said it was his own voice.
Wow.
Bravo, Vinnie Bennett. Oh,
Vinny!
Oh my god.
gosh! I didn't make that
was
connection.
his brother called The Rock?
Isn't that amazing? So
Yeah.
anyway, yes, totally. What do we call it? Retrofitted.
Retconning, yeah, and the all the raceway stuff was awesome. I loved it.
Cool.
Yes.
And the retro Universal logo.
Yes.
And I noticed
The
that
80s and
watching
90s.
the Fast and the Furious today, the 90s logo was more newer than that 89 one that they used.
And the first thing was such a great way to open the movie as well. Like, kind of, you see the fuzz and it pulls outwards and it's a reflection off the visor. Then you see the helmet has Toretto on it. And then you see it's 1989 splash
Yes.
screen. Like, oh my gosh, this is amazing.
And if you've seen number 1, you go, oh,
This is
I
what's
know
happening.
what we're about to see.
Right. See, I obviously had no idea.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's do final words. Sarah, do you want to start us off?
I was surprised at how good 1 was. I think I came to this franchise, if not in 5, then certainly in 6. I think 5. I think I watched 5 before I had to watch 6 and review it. And I gave 6 a scathing review. I think a very humorously written scathing review. I don't know, I felt like 7 I quite liked, of course, and we went into it knowing it's going to be sad, and then 8 was very goey and confusing. And I forgot to say, Charlize Theron, I mean, look, one thing about 9 that I'm not keen on is that it's completely overstuffed. There are far too many people, far too many characters, and good actors in it. And Charlize Theron, I think, actually is terrific as Cypher. Yeah. And there's not enough of her. But given that there's too much Cardi B and Helen Mirren, what can you do? Anyway.
And Otto.
And Otto. I'm not keen on that casting at all. But never mind. We'll let it go. I'm amazed that this franchise made itself into what it is out of number one, but like I say, number one, respect. And I'm looking forward to revisiting. What do you reckon, William? I should go back to 5?
To 5, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to go
Four's
back to
not
5.
very good.
Nah, don't need it. And I don't need Tokyo Drift. So,
Everyone needs a little bit of Tokyo Drift in their lives.
I think I've seen clips and that's enough. By the way, listeners, in case you are thinking of rediscovering these, there is a pretty terrific 13 or 15 minute clip on YouTube, which is this guy who's speaking like this through the whole thing, introducing you to 1 to 8 anyway, which I quickly binged before going into the cinema to see 9. So that would be highly recommended. But I'm looking forward to going back to 5, 6, 7, 8.
Awesome, Sarah. Well, I had a great time in F9. As you know, it was the first film for me to see in the series. I had no expectations. I had low expectations. And so my expectations were exceeded. It was absolutely ridiculous. I think the moment when they're in space, waving at the Chinese space station was kind of a wonderful moment. And you know, it never pretended to be anything but what it was. The first film, look, I do not regret never having seen this movie. I don't wish I'd seen it when it came out. It's not my kind of film, but it was nostalgic and it was of its time, and I felt a little bit sad that we don't get movies like that anymore, even if it's not a film that I particularly want to watch. But no, I had a lot of fun. I would happily watch some of the ones you've said, but I'm not going to go out there and diligently work my way through 2, 3, 4.
It would be quite funny if you went
5.
backwards, actually.
Yeah.
Maybe you should now go
Yeah.
8 and then 7 and see if you can pick up the threads.
Put it all together. Yeah. Awesome. William.
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy, and I'm so glad you liked it, because this franchise is near and dear to my heart. I think 8 was a real disappointment to a lot of people, and a lot of the behind-the-scenes bits and bobs, I think, contributed to that. So bringing Justin Lin back and really just having cool ideas and retrofitting the franchise to now include his long-lost brother, it's like, shouldn't really work, but it kind of does. I really, really love this movie. The space stuff is insane. Like, everyone's always joking, where will they go next? In space? And they actually did it, and it wasn't in a rocket. It was in a car with a rocket strapped to it, because why not?
Did you guys watch The Credit Cookie?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
right. So we know that Justin Lin is set to do number 10, and
Yes.
we now know, of course, what's
Do
going
we?
on.
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
For
And we
9, 10, 11.
Wow.
The entire franchise is going to end at part 11.
And so we know what's going to happen in 10, and I'm excited for that already.
Well, maybe I will go back and watch so I can understand all the in-jokes.
And so, yeah, speaking of in-jokes, there's so many, labyrinthine plot connections to the other movies. And one thing I love about the series is that the plot, even though it's ridiculous, they care about it. The creators care about it, the writers care about it, and most importantly, the actors, bless their really just wooden hearts and faces, care so deeply about it. And that adds something, right? It's not anonymous anymore. Like, their lives... I mean, some of them have been doing this for 20 years, and you see it in Michelle Rodriguez and Vin Diesel's interactions. Like, they inhabit these characters in a way that's beyond just, acting for a paycheck.
That's very true.
And it really feels special in a way. I think the family stuff it's not just for show.
I was going to say, it makes them feel like a real family. But it does. It actually does.
Yeah.
Let's hope in real life The Rock and Vin Diesel reconcile for real, and it will just mirror the entire arc of each of these movies. Thank you for listening to another episode of Cinema in Context. If you enjoyed our podcast, then please share it with your film-loving friends. You can listen to Cinema in Context through SoundCloud, Spotify, Stitcher, Radio Public, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram, which are also great places to let us know what you think of this episode or give us suggestions for future films to discuss and compare. Look out for our next episode in a month's time, and until then, no order mai!